Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. The Senate passes a bill to boost the U.S. tech industry and help it compete with Chinese tech. What do Democrat and Republican supporters have to say about it? Vice President Harris says her trip to Central America was a success and that she will visit the border. This while Texans push for control of their own border amid federal inaction. President Biden pulls the plug on official negotiations with Republicans. Now he'll look to other ways to push his massive infrastructure bill. The Treasury asks for an investigation into how the tax records of the richest Americans were leaked after a ProPublica report disclosed the private information. The Biden administration drops former President Trump's orders that attempted to ban social media apps, TikTok and Wechat. He wants his administration to look into these kinds of apps directly. The apps are known to have connections to the Chinese Communist Party. The administration says it will conduct its own review of the apps with ties to the Chinese regime. President Biden's executive order directs the Commerce Department to evaluate the app threats. The Wall Street Journal said unnamed Biden administration officials told them Biden's executive order is designed to replace Trump's orders with a more comprehensive process. Last year, cybersecurity experts warned that TikTok is being used by the Chinese regime to spy on Americans. A Delphi University associate professor, Mark Grabowski, told the Epoch Times that TikTok is merely Chinese government malware masquerading as a social media app. The Senate passed a bipartisan bill to boost the U.S. tech industry. It aims to help the U.S. compete with Chinese technology. NTD's Jessica Beatty has the details.
On this vote, the yeas are 68.
The Senate passed a bill Tuesday to boost American technology so the U.S. can better compete with China.
This bill.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says as a percentage of GDP, the U.S. spends less than half as much as the Chinese Communist Party on basic research.
They believe that democracy itself is a relic of the past, and that by beating us to emerging technologies, they will be able to reshape the world in their own image. Well, let me tell you something. I believe they are wrong.
The bill is passed.
The bill passed 68-32. It shows that taking a hard line with China is one of the few issues with bipartisan support. Republican Senator Roger Wicker says it's a game changer for U.S. research efforts.
This is an opportunity for the United States to strike a blow on behalf of answering the unfair competition that we are seeing from Communist China.
About $190 billion would go to strengthening U.S. technology and research, and another $54 billion would go to increasing production and research into semiconductors and telecom equipment. The Commerce Secretary said the funding could result in 7 to 10 new U.S. semiconductor plants. The House still has to pass the bill before President Biden can sign it into law. And the U.S. is launching a new task force to fix supply chain problems in certain industries.
We are launching a new supply chain disruptions task force to tackle near-term bottlenecks in the semiconductor, home building and construction, transportation, and agriculture and food industries.
The task force aims to boost domestic production in 4 areas: pharmaceutical, semiconductor, electric car batteries, and critical minerals. It seeks to control shortages of vital goods and cut reliance on competitors like China.
We also have to push back against unfair trade practices by competitor nations that have hollowed out the U.S. industrial base and undermine our supply chain security.
The Secretaries of Commerce, Agriculture, and Transportation will lead the new task force. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
68 Republican House members are coming out against Biden's move to waive sanctions on Russia's pipeline project. They say it puts U.S. energy at a disadvantage. In early May, the Biden administration dropped sanctions against Nord Stream 2 and its CEO, who is a known ally of President Vladimir Putin. Republicans sent a letter to Biden explaining that dropping sanctions will allow Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline to move forward, while Biden restricts pipeline projects in the United States. The Nord Stream 2 pipeline would carry natural gas from Russia to Germany and Europe. Biden defended the move, saying that although he opposed the project, the pipeline is now nearly finished. But Republican Congress members said Biden's reason for waiving the sanctions undermines U.S. credibility. They also say it costs American jobs and puts American energy at a competitive disadvantage. President Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin are set to hold their June 16th summit in an 18th century Swiss villa overlooking Lake Geneva in Geneva, Switzerland. The classic building in its city is the largest park, dotted with redwood trees, rose bushes, and ancient fountains, and now lined with barricades and barbed wire. Ongoing disputes over election interference, cyber attacks, human rights, and Ukraine will weigh in on the meeting. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov will accompany Biden and Putin. In the Cold War era, President Ronald Reagan and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev held their first summit in Geneva. VP Harris defended her decision to make her first trip to Mexico and Guatemala instead of visiting the U.S. border. While she hasn't made a trip to the border since becoming president, Harris said that she has visited the border before and she will do it again, but she did not say when. All this while Texans living near the border are becoming fed up with the surge of illegal crossings, human smuggling, and threats from illegal aliens trespassing on their property. Here's more. Biden's point person for the border crisis, VP Kamala Harris, met with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador on Tuesday. Harris and Obrador spent more than an hour in private meetings, according to the White House. The United States pledged to give Mexico $130 million of taxpayer money over 3 years. It's to support Mexican workers with the goal of creating $250 million in investment and sales in southern Mexico. Harris discussed the migrant surge with Obrador.
But we also must, of course, tackle the issues that are inherent in the situation at the border and what we must do to strengthen legal pathways for people to enter the United States.
Harris has taken criticism from Republicans for visiting other countries first instead of the border. After the meeting, she told reporters she had been to the border before and will go again, but she did not specify when she last visited it.
Yes, I will, and I have before.
On the domestic front, Texans near the border are losing their patience. They're pushing to have local and state control of their border. That's because residents don't expect any help from the federal government, which is dragging its feet. Parents say they're afraid to let their children play outside, and sheriffs say someone may be shot sooner or later. Border Patrol has caught well over 250,000 illegal aliens coming into Texas from Mexico in recent months, though thousands more managed to slip through. What's more, CBP agents spotted a 5-year-old migrant girl from Guatemala wandering alone at the border wall in California. Agents saw her being dropped off near the end of the border wall in San Ysidro, which is about 15 miles south of San Diego. After they picked her up, they determined she was in good health, and the girl said her parents were already in the U.S., but she didn't have any contact information. Border Patrol has notified both the Mexican and Guatemalan consulates and HHS. U.S. border authorities have been deployed to assist Mexican immigration officials in Cancun. They're looking for migrants posing as travelers with the intention of entering the U.S. illegally at the southern border. That's according to 2 Department of Homeland Security officials. Their effort is meant to stem the flow of migration at the U.S.-Mexico border. It comes after back-to-back months of increasing arrests at the border. In May, authorities encountered around 180,000 migrants on the southwest border. According to one of the officials, the U.S. is on track to surpass 2019 crisis numbers with 4 months still left in the fiscal year. Negotiations on the infrastructure bill have now come to an end. Now, President Biden is pursuing other paths to try to pass his infrastructure plan. We hear more from NTD's Christina Kim.
President Biden stopped negotiating with West Virginia Senator Shelley Moore Capito on the infrastructure deal. Capito said she was extremely disappointed after their call, but said she doesn't think Republicans played their hands poorly in the talks. According to her, Biden very clearly agreed to their counteroffer of spending $1 trillion over 8 years, but she said that his staff quickly walked back on it. And according to the White House, Biden won't budge on 2 issues: no action and not raising taxes on Americans who make under $400,000.
The latest offer that we had seen from Senator Capito's group did not meet the essential needs of our country to restore roads and bridges, prepare us for a clean energy future, and create jobs.
Biden is now talking to a different group with Senators Sinema, Manchin, and Cassidy. Republican Senator Bill Cassidy told reporters that their group of 20 is looking at a proposal that would come in around $900 billion over 5 years. And a 58-member bipartisan group came up with their own proposal of a near $1.25 trillion price tag. At the same time, Biden asked Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer to prepare to ram the legislation through using budget reconciliation. This method would allow the bill to pass without any Republican support.
And it may well be that part of the bill that'll pass will be bipartisan, and part of it will be through reconciliation. But we're not going to sacrifice the bigness and boldness in this bill.
Many Democrats have said they favor reconciliation, but Senator Manchin has resisted those efforts. And Democrats can't lose a single senator in the evenly split Senate. Christina Kim, NTD News.
The Treasury Department is asking authorities to investigate how some Americans' tax records were leaked after a media report came out about taxes paid by some of America's wealthiest.
So obviously we take it very seriously. I'm not going to comment on specific unauthorized disclosures of confidential government information. I can tell you that broadly speaking, we know that there is more to be done to ensure that corporations, individuals who are at the highest income are paying more of their fair share.
Media outlet ProPublica got a hold of a vast amount of IRS data. That data includes tax records for thousands of America's highest earners, covering more than 15 years. The outlet did not say how it got the records. Their data shows that in some years, billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk paid no federal income taxes. The IRS commissioner confirmed an investigation is underway. House Democrats are meeting Thursday to discuss their strategy for voting rights legislation. The reassessment comes as their initial efforts are floundering. The For the People Act, or H.R. 1, is stalled in the Senate after passing the House, with Republicans and at least one Democrat opposing it. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said Tuesday that Republicans will attempt to block the voting bill, while House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says her chamber must find a way to pass it, adding that the House will take up another option, the Voting Rights Act, in the fall. Democrats are concerned about how the GOP is changing elections at the state level. Republicans say they want to restore voter confidence after the controversy and fraud allegations surrounding the 2020 election. Thursday's virtual meeting is scheduled for noon. 2 states will be automatically sending out mail-in ballots to all registered voters in future elections. Nevada and Vermont are now the country's 2 newest permanent mail-in voting states. NTD's Allison Lee has the details.
Vermont Governor Phil Scott signed a bill into law on Monday requiring his state to automatically send out mail-in ballots to all active registered voters in all general elections. The new law also allows voters to cure a defective mail-in ballot by Election Day. The governor applauds the bill, saying voting should be made easy and accessible, but he believes the bill isn't enough. He wants state lawmakers to also apply permanent mail-in voting to all local, primary, and school budget elections. At the same time, Scott also wants to allow non-citizens across the state to vote in local elections. He vetoed 2 bills last week, which would allow non-citizens in 2 cities to vote in local elections, saying they aren't enough. Meanwhile, Nevada Governor Steve Sisolak signed a similar bill into law in his state last Wednesday. The state will also be automatically mailing out ballots to all registered voters. Ballots postmarked on or before Election Day can still be accepted 4 days following Election Day. And this new law does more than the one in Vermont. It covers all elections, not just general elections. Nevada voters can cure their signatures until the 6th day following an election. First-time voters can also vote by mail, and the new law allows for same-day registration. The governor says he's proud that Nevada continues to push forward with proven strategies that make voting more accessible and secure. Nevada and Vermont are joining 5 other states in having a permanent vote-by-mail system. Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, Utah, and Hawaii are also doing the same. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Auditors in Arizona expect to soon finish their hand recount of the nearly 2.1 million ballots cast in Maricopa County in the 2020 presidential election. Audit spokesman Randy Pullen told reporters earlier Tuesday that 1.6 million of the ballots have been counted. Former Arizona Secretary of State Ken Bennett told reporters the audit teams are shifting resources to ballot evaluation work. That's to make sure ballots are authentic. More workers have been brought on in recent days to help plow through the work, and officials added a 3rd shift. After the audit work is complete, auditors will send a final report to the state Senate. The audit is largely supported by Republicans, but has faced criticism from Democrats. They tried to halt the process over security and privacy concerns. A new monthly government payment could be coming your way. If you have children, you could start receiving that money as early as July. It's part of Biden's $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. NTD's Lin has the details.
The IRS on Monday started sending letters to 36 million families who could be eligible for advanced payment under a relatively new child tax credit. The IRS says most families won't need to take extra steps. If you're eligible, they will make direct deposits or send checks based on the information they have for you. So how much could you get? Each eligible family could receive up to $300 per child per month from mid-July to mid-December. The amount you'd get varies depending on your income and each child's age. Those who qualify earn less than $75,000 a year for individuals, $112,500 for the head of a household, and $150,000 for joint filers. Parents could receive up to $1,600 more per child per year than under the previous tax credit. The Tax Policy Center estimates more than 90% of families with children will get an average benefit of nearly $4,400. Lin, NTD News.
Just ahead, a 9/11 Relief Foundation shares its plans for a new initiative. The effort will go toward helping the surviving families of first responders who died because of 9/11 related illnesses. The Mid-Atlantic Air Museum held its World War II event over the weekend. About 30,000 visitors attended the event to see real-life battle reenactments and 80 vintage World War II aircraft. See more on the event in just a moment. An organization started after 9/11 to support families of fallen first responders is stepping up. It's announced plans to revive a heavy burden for surviving families. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
The Stephen Siller Tunnel to Towers Foundation is making a major announcement. The organization plans to pay off the mortgages of families of first responders who died of 9/11 related illnesses. First responder families with children 19 years old and younger are eligible to apply.
Let's remember 9/12 and what happened after, and the great loss of life after. It is a terrorist attack that keeps on taking lives that we at the Tunnel to Towers Foundation promise that we will never forget.
The foundation is named after Siller's brother, FDNY firefighter Stephen Siller. He ran through the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel to the Twin Towers on September 11, 2001. He died tragically but heroically trying to save lives that day.
So many were digging on that pile to find my brother, to find their brothers, their sisters, their mothers, their fathers. And they stayed down there for days and weeks and months to do it. And they weren't worried about themselves.
The families of FDNY firefighter Thomas Elkers and NYPD Sergeant Jeremiah Hunt were the first to have their mortgage paid off. Elkers died of cancer in May and leaves behind a wife and 3 daughters.
When Tom and I bought our home, we knew that it would be our forever home, and we dreamt of raising our 3 daughters there, growing old there together, watching our grandchildren there.
Hunt died of cancer in 2019, leaving behind a wife and 4 children.
There aren't adequate words to express what this means to our family, to know that we can stay together in our family home and look towards a brighter future.
This September will mark the 20th anniversary of the attacks. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The Mid-Atlantic Air Museum held its 30th annual World War II weekend event. Visitors could take a flight inside a restored aircraft or stay on land and watch reenactments of the battles. NTD's Jason Perry tells us more about the event.
With over 1,500 reenactors, 200 military vehicles, and 80 vintage aircraft from World War II, military enthusiasts are sure to get their fix. Around 30,000 people attended the weekend event commemorating the battles. 2 attendees expressed how special it was to meet and learn from World War II vets.
The youngest is like 95. They're not going to be here very longer. Our generation has a very limited time to meet them. The next generation will never be able to meet them or talk with them in person.
You'll see the grandfather or great-grandfather who is a World War II type. You'll see him walking with his son, and the young son is with them, so there's the family of 3 or 4 walking around. that kind of brings tears to my eyes.
Many of the veterans we spoke to showed humility. They said the troops who didn't make it home are the real heroes, and they are the ones who should be thanked. They even offered some words of wisdom to the next generation.
To be respectful for your country and be a good guy and not cause any trouble anywhere. You know what I mean? Trouble starts and you finish it, but that's it. Yeah.
If you hate a person, don't be afraid to tell them what you think of them. Let them know how you think and what he. But she said, I'll tell you one thing. Look in a mirror when you're telling that person. So who do you think you're telling? Yourself.
I tell them to stay strong, keep smiling, and try to see the sunny side of life.
World War II weekend is held in Reading, Pennsylvania, every year on the first weekend of June. Lots of classic military vehicles to see, but also the veterans who operated them. Jason Perry, NTD News.
Brooklyn's Film Festival is on again. NTD's Arian Pastar speaks with the organizers about the cultural event, now in its 24th year.
For the entire week, fans can enjoy the international movie experience in person here at the Windmill Studios. Now, this year's theme is called The Clearing. It conveys a sense of optimism people have now that the city is finally awakening from a 2-year hibernation.
Do we need anything besides bread?
Maybe some avocados, but only if they're ripe.
The festival's director, who is originally from Italy, says there weren't many foreign movies in New York even 20 years ago when the festival first started. He speaks about the event's strong suits.
Without knowing, we were creating the first international competitive film festival in New York.
American Desert was the main film on opening night. The movie is about a struggling army veteran returning to the US from Afghanistan in 2010.
Many of the homeless people in the United States are former veterans. Many of the people who are addicted to drugs are former veterans, and I thought it was a very interesting subject to touch in a fictional kind of way.
The lead actor says he prepared for the role by working with real veterans.
I am just incredibly grateful to them that they were willing to sort of open themselves up, as that's not comfortable for anyone, and share some experiences with me. So a big thank you to them, and if you're listening out there, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart.
American Desert can be seen on the festival's homepage. The festival will show a range of movies in person and online every day until Sunday, June 13th. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
A 1933 Double Eagle gold coin sold for a record-setting $18.9 million at auction in New York on Tuesday, and the world's rarest stamp went for $8.3 million. This Double Eagle was the only one ever allowed to be owned privately. It was sold by shoe designer and collector Stuart Weitzman. He bought it in 2002 for what was then a world record price of $7.6 million. The Double Eagle was the last gold coin produced for U.S. circulation, but it was never issued because President Franklin Roosevelt took the U.S. off the gold standard and all copies were ordered destroyed. Weitzman also sold a British Guyana 1-cent magenta stamp for $8.3 million. It was issued in 1856. The sale confirms its price as the most highly valued stamp in history. Still to come, Tesla makes adjustments to its Model 3 sedan. The shift means losing key consumer designations, but there's still a chance they could be restored later. The eviction moratorium in Illinois is causing issues for Chicago residents. The moratorium means even squatters cannot be removed. Find out more here on NTD News. Americans are moving within the country. The most recent data from the IRS shows blue states saw a net outflow of people. NTD's Christina Kim has that story.
The most recent IRS migration data shows that between 2017 and 2018, nearly 400,000 taxpayers and their dependents left blue states for red states, taking with them $26.8 billion in gross income. Blue states here are those with the Democrat-controlled House and Senate, and red states are those with the Republican-controlled House and Senate. The exodus was largely from California, New York, and Illinois, followed by New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Maryland. California alone lost $8.8 billion in gross income as their residents moved out of the state, mainly to Texas, Arizona, and Nevada. A 2020 study from the moving company United Van Lines shows that Idaho, South Carolina, Oregon, and South Dakota are also among the top states people are moving to. A routine Census Bureau survey asked the reason for people's moves. Some of the most popular answers were wanting a better house, followed by getting a new job or job transfer. Some of the least popular answers were natural disaster and foreclosure or eviction. The survey doesn't ask about the role of taxes, but a 2018 analysis by the libertarian think tank Cato Institute argues that taxes influence migration patterns. For example, they say people might factor in the effects of income tax when choosing to move from California, a high-tax state, to Nevada, which has no income tax. And a Tax Foundation analysis finds that blue states tend to have high state-local tax rates compared to red states. While government data on this past year isn't available yet, some are saying the pandemic and the civil unrest may influence migration trends. Christina Kim, NTD News.
A change in technology ends in a change in ranking for the Tesla Model 3. Consumer Reports removed 2 designations for the best-selling vehicle after the automaker made adjustments to the car's auto brake and front collision warning systems. The Model 3 also lost its top safety pick from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety. Tesla recently announced the Model 3 and the Model Y SUV's radar-based systems for detecting obstacles were replaced with its own camera-based system that it calls Tesla Vision. One official with Consumer Reports says he's not sure why Tesla would make this change unless a lack of parts made it necessary. Tesla and other automakers are struggling to find enough computer chips for their vehicles. The Institute says it will perform new tests on the camera-only system, so there is a possibility Tesla's ratings could be restored. Illinois' eviction moratorium is set to end in August, but this has caused issues for some people who don't even rent their homes. One senior citizen tells NTD how her home was taken over by uninvited guests.
Chicagoan Clarice Mason put her Southside house up for sale in February of 2020. A few months later, the senior citizen was surprised to find some squatters living in her house.
In August, that 3 women were going into the house. So I immediately called the police and had them to escort me to the house. And the police told her to show him her ID, which she did. And this is when I found her in court. He told me I had to go to civil court. I could not put her out. And so then after that, I started going to court.
The house was newly renovated but left vacant.
I spent over $40,000 in repairs for the house. I backsplash, new cabinets, new stove, stainless steel refrigerator, new flooring.
But to her dismay, she could not evict the unwelcome guests.
The lawyers I talked to all told me that was probably what was, the reason, the rationale, because the governor had the moratorium.
In March of 2020, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker issued an eviction moratorium preventing landlords from pursuing legal action against a tenant during the pandemic. The moratorium protects tenants, lessees, and residents, which technically includes squatters.
And these people knew that, but they're getting over. They're getting by because of this moratorium. 50 or 60 hours calling the utility companies, calling lawyers. It's very discouraging. I'm very discouraged.
Mason says she spent over $1,000 on legal advice and court fees.
I am a retired educator. I'm on a fixed income, but I don't want to spend my money on this.
Illinois' governor said the state's eviction moratorium will end in the coming months.
We will work with our partners to bring an end to the eviction moratorium in August with a gradual phase out over the next few months.
Mason is hopeful that come August, when the eviction moratorium expires, she will gain some recourse.
Ever seen a tornado slurped up by the sky? Here we have some aerial footage of an unusual variety of sky storm from Monday evening in Colorado. The swirl you see is a Landspout tornado. It grows from the ground up, whereas the more common supercell tornadoes start from the sky. Here you can see a narrow rope-like condensation funnel forming. That spinning motion actually started near the ground. This type of tornado often happens when very moist air meets very dry air. While it's less common, it's also usually less dangerous than its supercell equivalent. As western states struggle with severe drought, Lake Mead is projected to drop to its lowest levels since the Hoover Dam was built. Lake Mead and the Hoover Dam straddle the Arizona-Nevada state line along the Colorado River, about 35 miles southeast of Las Vegas. The river provides drinking water to areas including Arizona and Nevada. The dam generates electricity for parts of Arizona, California, and Nevada, but that's now in jeopardy. By Thursday, Lake Mead's water level is expected to sink to the lowest it's been since 1930s when it was filled. Officials predict water will continue to decline until at least November. Coming up, Texas condemns China's forced organ harvesting. They also call on Congress to act. And Chinese authorities are pausing vaccinations at the epicenter of the latest virus spike. Officials say they want to prevent infections at overcrowded sites, but they are continuing with mass testing. That and more on NTD News. Being killed for your organs sounds like a plot to a horror movie, the worst of its kind. But investigations into China's transplant industry have found this to be a reality. Texas, the latest state to condemn the communist regime's bloody business, is calling on Congress to act. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story.
The resolution passed with just about full support in both the Texas House and Senate. Governor Greg Abbott signed it on Monday, officially condemning China's grisly practice of forcibly harvesting people's organs for transplants. About 2 years ago, an independent London-based tribunal found that this has gone on for years on a significant scale. Republican Representative Matt Shaheen, a resolution sponsor, said in a previous interview that transplant tourists need to be reminded they may get a stolen organ.
We also asked the medical community to make sure that they're aware, that others are aware, that if people do travel to China for organ transplant, that there is a chance that the organ they're receiving is through these means.
And whose organs are being stolen? The China Tribunal says they're mainly from practitioners of Falun Gong, a spiritual practice persecuted by the Chinese Communist Party. As part of the resolution, Texas has also asked Congress to ban partnerships between U.S. medical companies and Chinese companies linked to forced organ harvesting. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
A short incubation period, rapid transmission, and a high viral load. Those are the characteristics of a stronger variant of the CCP virus, and it's hitting southern Chinese cities. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more on the story.
A virus outbreak in southern China's Guangdong province is getting worse. Authorities have labeled cities like Guangzhou and others in the region as posing a high risk of infection. A strain of the CCP virus, known as the Chinese Communist Party virus or COVID-19, commonly found in India, is behind the new infections. But expert analysis says this outbreak is different from previous surges. That's according to a report from Chinese media group Caixin. The report quoted the deputy director of Guangzhou's CDC, who explained that this round of the outbreak has shown a short incubation period, rapid transmission, and a high viral load. A top expert from the city's infectious disease center also disclosed another feature of the variant. He pointed out findings from an epidemiological survey showing the infection is able to spread farther through the air than the 3-foot distance scientists previously supported. He noted that the virus variant's transmissibility worries him most of all. Research suggests it can transmit for 5 generations or 5 different patients without weakening. He called it much worse than the 2020 version. According to Caixin, information on the Guangzhou outbreak's patient 0 is still missing, 2 weeks after the start of the surge. Officials there closed down all local farmers markets located in the city's mid and high-risk areas. That's on top of the quarantined and controlled zones. What's more, from Monday on, people there will be required to scan their government-issued health QR codes when entering restaurants and healthcare facilities. The codes are part of China's contact tracing system. They indicate whether users have come in contact with a confirmed virus patient. Guangzhou's neighboring city is also taking precautions. Guangzhou city authorities recently announced that anyone leaving the area must present a negative test result taken within the last 72 hours. All non-essential gatherings are suspended too. The mandate added that if residents host visitors from high-risk cities, they must report the information upon their guests' arrival.
China's Guangzhou city is suspending vaccinations for fear of overcrowding sites, but at the same time, authorities there are administering the world's largest citywide virus testing. Meanwhile, questions are rising over the efficacy of Chinese vaccines.
Chinese Communist Party or CCP officials in China's latest virus epicenter, Guangzhou, are suspending CCP virus vaccinations. But why? Local authorities said last week that they will shift their focus from vaccinations to virus testing. They say the change aims to reduce infections at overcrowded vaccination sites. But local media reports that the city administered over 18 million virus tests in less than 2 weeks, leading people to overcrowding testing sites. The abrupt change in vaccine distribution is sparking online discussions in China. Netizens on Chinese social media Weibo are asking local authorities for a more convincing reason. One says stopping vaccinations in order to conduct virus tests sounds like an inadequate explanation. Experts say there will be herd immunity when 70% to 90% of the population is vaccinated, meaning the disease is unlikely to spread. And that already seems to be a big checkmark for Guangzhou. According to the city's official data, over 70% of people aged 18 to 59 are already vaccinated. And in the city's worst-hit district, that figure is more than 80%. That's why concerns are rising over Chinese vaccines' effectiveness. A netizen writes on Weibo, "I think it's because the current vaccine has no effect on the virus variants. If the vaccine is effective, vaccination should be accelerated in this case." Back in May, local media reported that 5 Chinese medical experts sent to Vietnam all got infected with the Indian variant. A former Chinese medical worker told Radio Free Asia all of them had been vaccinated in China before going to Vietnam. And in March, the Prime Minister and the President of Pakistan both tested positive for the CCP virus, despite having received Chinese vaccines. About 90% of vaccine doses administered in Chile since February were from China's Sinovac, but virus cases and deaths there rose. Chile is the first country in the world where virus cases didn't drop after vaccinations. Instead, it went the opposite.
Still to come, UK members of Parliament say statues should stay. It comes a year after Black Lives Matter protesters defaced or pulled down statues of historical figures. Under the pandemic, more UK residents have embraced living on boats. And now a growing number of boats in the UK's canals and waterways are now homes. Find out more in just a minute. UK lawmakers are debating what to do with statues a year after Black Lives Matter protesters pulled down or defaced images of historical British figures.
Exactly 1 year after the 17th century merchant Edward Colston's statue in Bristol was thrown into the river, MPs debate preserving heritage and statues in cities. Labour's Rupa Huq talks about the complex characters of history. She says statues might seem to belong to the past, but it's necessary to keep them.
And I would say don't remove these statues, but contextualise them. They're not for everyone, but do keep them because they are a part of history and, they need to be put in proper context.
Culture Minister Caroline Dynudge says history shapes who we are and what we value. The best approach is to retain and explain statues to give their full story to the public.
And memorials don't just have historical significance. They're not just pieces of stone or marble. They're also sometimes very deeply symbolic, culturally or emotionally, sometimes to those who have died, and hold a huge importance to those that visit them.
Last summer, during the Black Lives Matter protests in the UK, some statues were pulled down, removed or vandalised. Protesters defaced the statue of Winston Churchill in London's Parliament Square, taping a Black Lives Matter sign to it and spraying it with graffiti. A statue of Queen Victoria in Leeds was sprayed with graffiti including the words murderer and slave owner.
A man slapped French President Emmanuel Macron Tuesday while the president was greeting a crowd. NTD's French correspondent David Vies has more.
President Emmanuel Macron visited a small town in southern France on Tuesday. At the meet and greet, a man suddenly slapped him in the face. The moment was captured on video that is circulating in France. Macron was visiting restaurant owners to address returning to a normal life after the pandemic, when a man from among the crowd slapped the president on the left side. In the video, we can hear people who oppose Macron saying Montjoie and Saint-Denis. Those are war cries during the monarchies of the Middle Ages. So, some speculate the man who slapped the president was from a monarchy movement, though no further details have been given on the motive of the attack. The military arrested the slapper and another person. French public opinion about the incident is divided, with some supporting the president and others defending the slapper. The prime minister said it's an attack on democracy as a whole. After the aggression towards the president, I'm simply saying to the people of the nation, I am completely in solidarity because by targeting the head of the state, it's quite simply democracy that is being targeted. The president is touring France in anticipation of his campaign for the upcoming election in 1 year.
Concerns about overseas travel don't seem to be going away yet. That's why many people are shifting their attention to the waterways. For the British, living on a boat is now a new way of life.
Incredible canals and waterways crisscross the UK. They don't just provide transportation for the freight industry. For an increasing number of people, the canals are both their home and their workplace.
The appeal for us is the freedom and waking up with a new back garden every morning, if that's what you want to do. Yeah, the people are just amazing. They really are.
The Canal and River Trust says a quarter of boats on the network are new homes. That's up from 15% in 2011. This new lifestyle has become more popular since the lockdown started.
Certainly January and February this year were extremely busy. Yeah, we were a good 50% up in Jan and Feb.
Newer boats rival luxury apartments, while traditional ones are more cramped. But a well-designed space can even make room for a model train set. A married couple has lived in their narrow boat for 16 years. They admit a floating home is not always pleasant.
It's not as dreamy and as nice as it is today, I can tell you.
But we wouldn't change it for the world. You have to embrace the wildlife, the living on the water and everything that goes with it. I mean, it's no good living on a boat and then complaining that the ducks go past cracking all the time.
Canals and waterways were once the backbone of the UK before the Industrial Revolution. As people are still worried about traveling overseas during the pandemic, the canals are seeing a renaissance.
Up next, a karate athlete fights for her spot on Germany's Olympic team as the Tokyo Olympics get set to host karate for the first time ever. And the 145th Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show is set for Tarrytown, New York next week. This year will feature 4 new breeds in the competition. All that and more here on NTD News. For the first time, the martial art of karate will be part of the Olympics this year. As Tokyo prepares for the Games next month, the battle has long been underway for karate athletes.
Punches, kicks, and strikes. German karate world champion Jasmin Eutner has been training this way for over a year, even during the pandemic. She is fighting for a spot in the upcoming Tokyo Summer Olympics.
My name is Jasmin Eutner.
I'm 28 years old and I want to use this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to take part in the Olympic Games as karateka.
The Tokyo Games mark the debut of karate as an Olympic sport. This traditional martial art will likely withdraw from the next Olympics. The competition is fierce for karate athletes all over the world. This is due to strict eligibility rules and the limited number of spots.
We have been invited to take part as a guest sport for the first time, and of course, we don't have the previous experience that the other sporting disciplines have had. And secondly, we had the hardest qualifiers globally, as only 10 athletes were allowed to take part. And so the preparations have been very, very hard for all the athletes.
To add to the pressure, Utner has not managed to qualify on points alone. She has to win a spot at the qualification tournament in Paris later this month. Only the top 3 from the Paris competition will get through, but her coach has faith in her. He says she's really fired up in practice. Utner is also ambitious.
It was a pretty crazy time what we were having to do. And even with the training, we had to intensify the sessions. But it was super exciting and very cool.
Utner is also a so-called sports soldier. The German army is providing her with financial support.
An unexpected invasion arrives during a Polish soccer match. A parachutist dropped out of the sky onto the middle of the field on Sunday. Olympia Elbląg and Pisa Primavera Barczewo were facing off in the Polish 3rd Division at the time. The match was briefly paused while the man gathered up his parachute and left the pitch. The referee, setting the funny side of the delay, brandished the intruder with a yellow card. People across cultures have been pickling foods since the beginning of time. Here are our top tips for how to ferment your own foods.
Welcome to Strong Mind and Body. I'm Gina Marie. We have been preserving food for a very long time. Pickling not only keeps food edible for long periods, but it also infuses it with healthy bacterial flora. This flora plays a crucial role in our digestion. Excessive antibiotic use is widespread in Western medicine. It's also commonplace in conventionally raised livestock animals. As a result, many Americans suffer from an imbalance in digestive flora. This can lead to major health problems. Fermented foods make up as much as 40% of some diets around the world. The probiotic cultures actually make foods more digestible as they help to break down tough proteins like meat. Having a healthy balance of intestinal flora can prevent and even reverse digestive issues. While there are many fermented foods available at the supermarket or grocery store, you can also make your own at a fraction of the cost. It's a great craft for the whole family. Pickling vegetables and fruits make wonderful gifts for friends and family as well. Here are 5 tips to get you started. Number 1, use fresh organic ingredients. The fresher the food you are fermenting, the better it will come out. Check in with a local farmer about purchasing a case of cucumbers, cabbage, carrots, or even beets if you're planning on big batches. Number 2, clean your veggies well. Bacteria, enzymes, and other invisibles on fruits and vegetables can affect your pickling. Make sure to clean them well. Number 3, use pint and quart jars. Large mason jars have self-sealing lids and can hold a good amount of product. They hold up best in home canners too. Number 4, balance your brine. Cabbage and cucumbers require being kept under a minimum of 1 to 2 inches of brine while fermenting. If it's less, you could spoil and lose your whole batch. Number 5, let ripen. Once packed after fermentation, let your pickled goods ripen another week or so the flavor can develop even more. And number 6, take a class or check out YouTube. Watching YouTube videos for pickling tips and tricks is helpful when starting out. It has many resources and recipes available, just as your local library does.
4 additional dog breeds are joining the competition ahead of the 145th annual Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Show dogs of all shapes and sizes are set to gather on the grounds of the Lyndhurst Estate in Tarrytown, New York on June 12th and June 13th. That's to compete in the famed Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. For the first time since 1877, the Dogo Argentino and the Beaver Terrier will be among the 209 breeds competing in the dog show.
So you have the Dogo Argentino, which is joining the working group. And once you see the dog, you'll see it's a working dog. It's very muscular and athletic, all white, from Argentina. They're originally bred to hunt very dangerous game. So you need that courageous, that courageous temperament. But they can be wonderful family pets if they're socialized and trained early.
The Barbet and the Belgian Lacanois will also be making their first appearances.
We also have the Barbet, which is actually a very old breed. That's the archetype of many of the French water dogs. It has a curly coat. It's known for its beard, which barb in Barbet is beard.
The 4 newly eligible breeds were introduced on Tuesday during a news conference in front of Lyndhurst Mansion.
Lyndhurst, one of the finest examples of 19th century Gothic revival architecture in America, is no stranger to dog shows. For 3 decades, local kennel clubs hosted dog shows on these park-like landscaped grounds.
The event is usually held in February in New York City, but it was moved from its longtime home at Madison Square Garden to an outdoor event at the Lyndhurst estate because of the pandemic. Due to New York State's restrictions, the Westminster show and surrounding events will not be open to spectators.
We're really excited to even have the show. Of course, after a year of COVID, everything's shifted and changed, and of course we had to postpone the show, but we wanted to make it as safe as possible for the exhibitors and the judges and everyone involved. And so we postponed the show and made it an outdoor event.
The show is the second longest continuously running sporting event in the United States after the Kentucky Derby. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.